Good morning, Chad. Speedrunning in video games has kind of become a staple of the genre. People really enjoy taking this thing that they love and spending the least amount of time with it possible. It's just too bad we can't speedrun anything in real life, otherwise we might have something interesting to talk about. All right, see ya. Oh, wait. Maybe we can speedrun something. You know, compared to video games, dating is really boring. What if there was a way to speedrun all the having to meet somebody and slowly getting to know them, all the while trying to win over their friends and family, and you could just skip straight to marriage? There are admittedly quite a few dating shows that try to do this, but the one we're going to be looking at is the 10th season of Love is Blind. The Love is Blind speedrun consists of 3 major splits. The pod split, where runners decide who they want to attempt the run with without seeing what they look like. The honeymoon split, where the couple spends a week on vacation after meeting face to face for the first time. And finally, the real life split, where runners attempt to implement their newfound relationship into their day-to-day life, with it all ending at the altar where the couples decide if they want to get married or not. For the purpose of what we're talking about today, only couples that get married at the altar and are still together at the reunion are considered successful blind any percent marriage speedruns. So will any of our runners prove that this is a doable run, or will we learn that unlike video games, you can't actually speedrun real life? Or is this just a dumb idea I came up with to find some sort of enjoyment out of watching this dumb show? Who knows? So let's start our conversation with Mike and Emma. Sometimes it's really easy to tell when a couple is doomed before they even make it out of the pod split. Usually it's really obvious though, like they're not attracted to each other when they meet, or one person is really toxic and for some reason the other person didn't seem to notice.
How old are you?
33.
I prefer dating younger.
How old are you?
I'm 32.
Mike and Emma are interesting because they're both completely pleasant people and they don't do anything wrong. Yet I believe that after their first conversation they were doomed because they soft-locked their run. When they show their very first date, Mike is very open about how he definitely wants to have children, and Emma is very open about how she's on the fence, mostly leaning towards no. No matter what other differences or arguments they have, the difference of opinion on children soft-locks the run and will always come up as an issue. And lo and behold, it comes up in almost every conversation after the pod split, particularly when they meet Mike's family and they're very vocal about how family is important to them and how they know Mike wants to have kids. To Mike's credit, when his family's coming on a little strong, he asks them to be open-minded. And when they meet Emma's family, they support both Emma and Mike in their desires, and they just want to make sure Emma is given the space to decide what she wants. It's so weird to say that this is the most doomed run because they're both really sweet and genuine, and they're not wrong for what they want. In fact, they're both right, and that's why this run doesn't work. Both of them just deserve to be with somebody who has the same stance as them. Mike deserves a wife that'll be an emphatic yes to having children with him, and Emma deserves to have a husband who won't pressure her into something she doesn't feel certain about wanting. Mike is very understanding and patient of Emma's reluctance to have children, but intentionally or not, if they get married, his desire is gonna put pressure on her. Ultimately, my judgment of their run being soft lock after their first conversation is correct, and they end up failing the run at the altar. So we're 0 for 1, and unfortunately, Mike and Emma weren't the only couple that I felt was doomed after the pod split. But this next couple I felt was doomed for very different reasons, and that's Alex and Ashley. I could be remembering wrong, but I believe this is the only couple on the show this season that attempt the sexual attraction skip. This is a trick that's very high risk, even in a regular relationship, but it's particularly risky in a run like this because sure, it allows you to skip the emotional and mental connection, but it also has the potential to break the run in later splits if the couple meets and they realize they're not physically attracted to each other. And at first, it does kind of work out for them. They're the 3rd fastest couple out of the pod split, and during the first segment of the honeymoon split, they really seem to be physically enjoying each other's company. That is until Alex has a conversation with another girl about how she's physically the type of person he would normally date, and Ashley isn't, while also remarking how important the physical connection is in marriage. He then goes on to say some things that make it sound like he's not attracted to Ashley.
Connected with like, hey, like,
You're not my usual type.
yeah, I'm comfortable saying, okay, it's not it, and I don't have a problem with it. I will break your heart to your face.
In the real world, I think it's absolutely normal to have a type and to want to be physically attracted to your partner. But if you're this type of person, why go on this show? It's like wanting to attempt a speedrun of Mario, but you don't even like playing video games. Like, why are you attempting this run? This ends up being a cascading problem where because they made their connection based on sexual attraction, they seem to miss some minor details in the pod. You know, little things like where they're gonna live or if they're still still in contact with ex-partners, something that ends up being a huge deal as Ashley becomes obsessed with Alex's dating history because she's been cheated on, and in fairness, Alex is a little shady about it.
I don't view it as something that you need to know about, but if you want every time I jerk off, I'll let you know.
But if this was going to be such a big issue for Ashley, she shouldn't have perpetuated the sexual attraction skip. Alex also has this obsession with appearing confident and stoic in every situation, and it's really weird.
Like stoicism. I have no
If you
fears.
never-
I'm confident in it.
Feel confident and
I think I bring a level of confidence.
I have a lot of self-confidence.
stoicism helps out as well.
I'm not nervous, like very confident.
I don't really think I have any fears at the moment.
It's like, have you ever been around somebody that's constantly telling you that they're fun or they're funny, as if they're trying to convince you instead of just being funny? Every now and then his facade would crack, and you get a glimpse of him trying to desperately control the situation, like when he makes a rude quip to Ashley at the reunion.
What were you here for?
To find a wife, I just didn't see any.
They're unable to move past their issues and insecurities together, and at the altar they both say no, with Ashley giving this weird, empowering speech in an attempt to humiliate Alex, thus leading to a weird but not unexpected failed run. So that's 2 runs now that I was confident were doomed from the beginning. Now let's take a look at a couple that I was completely wrong about in Chris and Jess. In my opinion, they had an unremarkable pod split. Jess seemed like a really sweet person and I kind of had no issue with her. Chris, on the other hand, I really had doubts about. For a while during the pod split, there's another girl who he claims is his #1 option. But when she tells him that she's gonna end their attempt, he suddenly changes his tune saying, "Oh yeah, no, I was totally gonna do the same." It just gives "you can't fire me, I quit," you know? Another reservation I had was that Chris comes across as very intense in conversations with Bree, saying he's into challenging himself and doing the things no one else wants to do, like he's a little David Goggins. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you either want a partner who matches that energy, or is at the very least understanding of it, because not everybody's into the high intensity thing. So I had my reservations coming out of the pod split, but their run does a lot better than I expected. During the honeymoon, they seem to be completely in love. Chris reveals his intense persona to Jess, and she doesn't seem to mind. She openly admits to him that she herself isn't a big physical activity person, but Chris doesn't seem to mind that either. She even talks to him about some insecurities she has, like not physically being his type, or his parents judging her for being older than him. And Chris does a really good job of reassuring her and affirming their love. After the honeymoon split, I fully believed that they were going to make it to the end. And I was wrong again, because during the real life split, they get this game breaking bug where Chris becomes a completely different person. He sits Jess down to tell her that he's used to dating girls that work out every day, and without directly saying it, he implies that she's not fit enough to be attracted to him and that their physical connection isn't great. Even remarking to other girls later that he wasn't sexually attracted to Jess, while making sure that everybody knows
I don't give a flying. I don't give a flying. I don't give a flying. Don't give a flying.
Chris even tries getting Bree to break it off with her fiance, claiming he could have turned it up on her during the pod split and Connor would have faded out of existence, and that Connor is very submissive and Chris would never be submissive, which is such a funny thing to hear out of somebody that would have to look up to talk to me, and I am not tall. I was wrong about this couple twice, and this is such a horrible way for Jess's run to end, but at the reunion she reveals that she's in a very happy relationship with someone, and everybody ends up dogpiling Chris, so justice is served. 3 couples down and we have no successful runs yet, but since I spoiled who's in one of them, let's talk about Bree and Connor. I don't have much to say about this run because I never really saw the potential for it. During the pod split, they make it seem as though the basis for their entire run were the coincidences they shared in their lives, things like Connor wanting to dance to Mr. Brightside and Bree being known for singing that in Michigan Stadium.
I'm known for singing that in the stadium.
Or them both wanting to go on a ski trip honeymoon. In a normal relationship, making an initial connection with somebody based on coincidences is totally fine. But there's supposed to be speed running marriage, and hoping for good coincidence RNG isn't enough to carry a run. And as much as I hate to admit that Chris is right, he kind of has a decent read on Connor. I wouldn't go so far to say he's submissive, but Connor is sometimes agreeable to a fault. During the pod split, Bree sort of strong arms Connor into picking her as his fiance. They have a conversation where Bree tells him that she only thinks about him, and when Connor reciprocates the thought, she tells him, "I feel like you know what to do," as if she's telling him to go break it off with his other connection. Literally the scene before this, Connor tells the crew that Emma is his #1 and Bree constantly annoys him. And not surprisingly, this just kind of ends up being their entire relationship, with Bree almost being mean at times and talking down to Connor while he just goes with it. It's sort of like they saw that the run had a little bit of potential, so they just held on to it even if it wasn't going to be a particularly good run. They're one of 2 couples this season that don't actually make it to the altar because Brie openly admits that she's not ready for marriage. They do reveal at the reunion that they're still together, but at this point, it's still a failed run because now they're just regular dating. The other couple that doesn't make it to the altar this season is Devontae and Brittany. This run is particularly interesting to me, not because it failed, but because of how wrong I was about it. In the pod split, I wasn't sure about Brittany and Devontae because we barely get to see their conversations. And in the few conversations we do see, we don't get any insight as to what they connected about. To make matters worse, during the honeymoon split, they come across a run killer. Brittany points out quite a few times that she feels Devontae is a little distant. She wakes up and he's not in bed. She initiates all the physical contact. And then when she brings it up to him, he explains that he's just a little more reserved and physical touch isn't really his love language. He's also going through it. This process is a lot to handle, and while he was in the pods, his grandpa died, so he came out with one less family member. So it's fair to say he's got a lot on his mind. It does lead to them having a fight where Brittany walks off, but Devontae finds her and he apologizes and he relents that he understands what's going on and he could do better. And this is where I end up being very wrong. This just seemed like a case where 2 people have different love languages. I understand that for some people this would end the run right there, but I thought that they saved it. After the honeymoon split, they seem to be very honest and vocal about their love languages. Brittany is willing to accept that Devontae doesn't want to be cuddling 24/7, but Devontae also admits that he needs to do a better job of using Brittany's love languages to communicate that he loves her. When they call off the wedding, they decide to stay together, and after their last conversation, it seemed like they wanted to make it work. Turns out, Devontae already thought that the run was dead, and he kept stringing Brittany along until she finally gave it up herself. We learned this at the reunion, where we also learned that Devontae is engaged to a different girl and about to be a father. There's a lot of speculation that Devontae wasn't attracted to Brittany, and that's the real reason he was distant from her. And honestly, it's a shame that the run had to end like that. Even though Devontae was probably lying, I really do think that if a couple with different love languages communicated about it the way that these 2 did, they could make a normal relationship work. Brittany also kind of seemed like she was willing to complete the run with anybody since she bought her wedding dress before she was even on the show. So what do I know? That's 5 couples down and 5 failed runs. But if you're starting to lose hope that this run might not be possible, don't worry, because we're moving on to couples that I have high expectations for, starting with Jordan and Amber. The thing that I like the most about Amber is that she's very honest about her life and what she's looking for. A less smart or less experienced runner might come onto the show and hide the fact that they had a child because that might brick a run for some people. Yet she offers this information right away, being very open about how she needs somebody that wants to be committed and involved with her kid. She also openly admits that she's not great at first impressions, which seems small, but other people on the show come on blaming modern dating for their issues. They don't tend to admit when they have skills they need to work on for their run. As if to prove the point of people not wanting children, Jordan tells the crew that one of his deal breakers that'll make him reset a run is kids. And yet he doesn't let that end his run with Amber. In fact, he doesn't ever talk about Amber's daughter like she's the only negative about her. I think less mature runners might say something like, I really like Amber, but she's got a kid. Whereas Jordan takes it very seriously, even admitting to losing some sleep because he knows it's a lot of pressure, but he's excited for it. Jordan is just very sweet, and I think it shows a level of maturity that sets them up for a successful run. They have an even better honeymoon split than I anticipated. Amber admits to the girls that she has a strong distaste for men, but Jordan is changing her mind because he's just a good dude. They continue to be open and honest with each other, and I think this run can go the distance. They keep this momentum going into the real life split. Jordan continues to get more and more excited about the prospect of meeting Amber's daughter, and Amber seems more and more excited about bringing Jordan into their lives. They have one slight hiccup when Amber overhears Jordan talking about being nervous about building a relationship with her daughter, and she interprets it as him having second thoughts. But Jordan is able to talk it through with her and get them back on the same page. With their openness and their communication and their desire to be together, it ends up not being a shock when they both say yes at the altar, which would make this our first successful run. Is what I would say if we didn't learn that they got divorced 4 months after the show, making this another failed run. Jordan claims Amber became toxic, Amber claims Jordan didn't want to move in with her, and I don't understand how they had so much potential and showed all of the signs of a successful run and still failed. If they can't do it, can anyone? Well, Yes, actually, there is one couple that showed from the very beginning that they had what it takes to make the run successful. They had an incredibly fast pod split, and they carried that momentum all the way to the altar where they said yes, and that couple is Vic and Christine. Their conversations just felt so different from the rest of the cast. They felt the most genuine. Both of them were very open about their insecurities and their past struggles, particularly with their families. They also connect over their shared faith, which can be a very good foundation to build off of. There was always the potential of one of them exaggerating their religion just to get a partner, but that doesn't end up being the case. Truthfully, there is a partial meta component to me thinking that they were a good couple. They get engaged at the end of episode 1 after we see just a couple of conversations. This means the show didn't feel Vic and Christine had enough conflict that they could farm drama off of, so they just skipped right to the engagement. And this trend continues well into the other splits because we still don't spend a lot of time with them, especially when you compare them to couples that had real issues like Mike and Emma or Ashley and Alex. They end up honeymooning in California instead of Mexico with the rest of the cast. I wonder why that is. Is maybe something different about them? Something that makes them stand out from the rest of the cast? Nah, I'm just joking. For some reason, the show just didn't have the budget to send 7 couples to Cabo, and since Vic and Christine didn't have any drama with anybody else in the pods, they decided they would go alone. During the real life split, Vic meets Christine's mom and it goes really well, maybe a little too well.
I thought he was hot. Can I say that?
And then we get to see them on just a couple of dates before we jump into their wedding stuff. They come across as the strongest couple even if we spend the least amount of screen time with them, because all of their conversations seem so impactful for the run. Every conversation just feels so impactful and relevant, and they don't waste time slowing down fighting over silly things like how you pack your socks. They communicate all their fears and their desires, making sure they're constantly on the same page. They actually use their time wisely to discuss how they're going to fit into each other's lives, ensuring that instead of fighting against each other, they remember that they're doing this run together. I was just so happy to hear that they stayed together and were thriving. So out of 7 potential runs, 2 make it past the altar, and only one of those was actually successful. This raises the question, is Love is Blind a viable marriage speedrunning strategy? This may seem controversial, but I think the answer's gotta be yes. Not because it's a good idea, but because technically it's possible. The question was never, should this be done? It was, can it be done? And since one couple did it, it's a doable run. Should 99.99% of people attempt this sort of speed run? Absolutely not. Just like how blind speedrunning isn't for everybody, marriage speedrunning takes a very specific player with a very specific mindset, very good communication skills, and just a little bit of good RNG to make it work. Maybe just try the normal route first instead of attempting the blind any % marriage speedrun. And if for some reason someone watching this is going to attempt this run, you better pray to God that Chris isn't hiding in your shoes waiting to dominate you. All right, see ya.